The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their history. Where once there had been cold, logical debate, now there was something that hadn't been seen in these chambers for centuries: genuine fear. Velthar stood at the center of the assembly, but his crystalline form no longer shone with perfect control. Cracks ran through his structure, letting out chaotic light patterns that betrayed his emotional turmoil. He was one of the few Kelthan leaders who had managed to resist the human emotional contamination, but even he was struggling. "The humans have unleashed something terrible upon the galaxy," he declared, his voice shaking like breaking ice. "Our people are abandoning their duties, questioning orders, making irrational choices. The Zenthi report productivity drops of over 60%. The Vorthak colonies are in open rebellion. Even some of our own Kelthan citizens are removing their logic implants." A Nexari delegate clicked its metal limbs nervously. "Our computer networks are being overwhelmed by requests for information about something called love. Our workers are forming what they call friendships and refusing to be transferred away from each other. This is chaos." "It's worse than chaos," added a Zenthi representative, his normally smooth voice cracking with unfamiliar emotion. It's beautiful, and that terrifies me." But while the aliens debated how to contain the emotional plague, Earth was preparing for war. Everyone knew the aliens would respond with violence eventually. It was the most logical solution to their problem. Admiral Suno Kang stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Earth's newest and most advanced warship. Around him, his crew prepared for the largest battle in human history. They had received intelligence that the combined alien fleets were massing for a final assault on Earth. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "alien fleet detected on long-range sensors. Estimated 4,000 ships approaching Sol system." 4,000 ships. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, all focused on one goal: destroying the emotionally contaminated humans before their infection could spread further. "How many ships do we have?" Admiral Kang asked. 700, sir, including our alien defectors. Those defectors were perhaps the most important part of Earth's defense. When the emotional awakening began spreading through alien space, not everyone had panicked. Some had embraced their rediscovered feelings and chosen to join the humans. Captain Subin Lee commanded one of the mixed squadrons. Human ships flying alongside Vorthak vessels whose crews had abandoned logic for the messy beauty of emotion. Her second-in-command was now Torvak, a former Vorthak general who had experienced love for the first time in his adult life and declared it worth fighting for. "Human captain," Torvak said in his deep, rumbling voice, "my people follow mathematical precision in battle. But you have taught us something else. You have taught us to fight with passion." "Are you ready for this?" Subin asked. "For the first time in my existence, I am fighting for something I believe in, rather than something I was programmed to defend." "Yes, I am ready." The alien armada approached Sol system with the cold efficiency that had made them masters of the galaxy. Their battle plans were mathematically perfect, their formations flawless, their weapons configured for maximum logical effect. They had no idea what they were really facing. Dr. Min-Ho Kim had spent months developing new weapons specifically designed to exploit alien psychology. The empathy bombs were just the beginning. Now he had created devices that could overload alien neural networks with concentrated bursts of human emotional experience. "The Berserker transmitters are online," he reported to Admiral Kang. "When activated, they'll broadcast the emotional state of our crews directly into enemy ship systems." "And what exactly will that do to them?" Ever seen what happens when a computer tries to process the emotional state of a parent fighting to protect their child? Or a soldier's rage when their friends are killed? Their logical systems will crash trying to understand it. The battle began at the edge of the solar system, near Neptune's orbit. The alien fleet moved in perfect formation, their weapons firing with mechanical precision. But the human response was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Captain Yunahan led the first wave of human fighters, and she fought like someone with nothing left to lose. When her wingman Juno Nam took a hit and his ship started spinning, out of control, She didn't make the logical choice to maintain formation. Instead, she broke off her attack run to protect him. "Yuna, get back in formation," came the order from Fleet Command. "No, sir," she replied calmly. "He's my friend. I'm not leaving him." The alien computers recorded this as a tactical error, one ship abandoning its mission to save another. But what they didn't calculate was the effect on the rest of the human pilots. Seeing Yuna's loyalty, they fought even harder. Their accuracy improved, their coordination became perfect, and their willingness to take risks increased dramatically. Taiho Choi, now chief engineer of the entire human fleet, activated the Berserker transmitters. Instantly, every alien ship in range was flooded with the raw emotional experience of humans at war. The Kelthan flagship commander Zalketh was reviewing tactical data when the transmission hit. Suddenly, his perfectly logical mind was filled with the fury of a human mother whose child had been threatened, the desperate courage of soldiers charging impossible odds, the grief of friends who had watched comrades die. His crystalline body began to crack and spark as his neural implants tried to process these alien sensations. Around him, his crew stumbled and fell, overwhelmed by emotions they had never experienced. What is this madness?" Zalketh managed to gasp. "This is what it feels like to be human." Admiral Kang's voice came over the communication channel. "This is what you rejected. This is what you fear." But the real turning point came when Captain Daeho Oh recovered from his previous heroic sacrifice, led an assault on the alien command center. His mission was mathematically impossible: penetrate the heaviest defenses in the fleet with a single squadron of human ships. The logical choice would have been to find another target. But Daeho wasn't thinking about logic. He was thinking about his daughter Minji back on Earth, probably watching the battle on the news, trusting her father to keep her safe. "All ships, this is Daeho Oh," he broadcast on an open channel. "I want every alien in this system to hear this. You think emotions make us weak? You think love makes us vulnerable? Let me show you what a father's love can do." His ships dove into the alien formation like meteors, their weapons firing not with cold efficiency, but with passionate fury. They took impossible risks, made insane maneuvers, and somehow succeeded where logic said they should fail. When Daeho's ship took critical damage, he didn't retreat. Instead, he did something the aliens never expected. He broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. "This is Captain Daeho Oh of Earth." His voice carried across space, reaching every alien communication network. "You want to know why you can't defeat us? It's not because we're stronger or smarter or better armed, it's because we fight for love. I fight for my daughter. My crew fights for their families. Our species fights for the right to feel." Then, he did something that became legendary throughout the galaxy. Instead of ramming his damaged ship into the enemy like before, he opened his weapon bays and began broadcasting human music. Lullabies he used to sing to Minji when she was small. The effect on the alien fleet was devastating. Soldiers who had suppressed their emotions for decades suddenly remembered what it felt like to be loved. Parents who had forgotten their children's faces began to weep. Leaders who had ruled through cold logic found themselves questioning everything they believed. The battle continued for hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The aliens fought with mathematical precision, but humans fought with passion. And passion, it turned out, was the more powerful force. As alien ships began to withdraw or surrender, Admiral Kang opened a channel to the retreating fleet. "This doesn't have to be the end," he said. "You came here to destroy us because you feared what we represent. But maybe what we represent is exactly what you've been missing. Maybe the galaxy needs more emotion, not less." The alien response came from an unexpected source: Velthar himself, the Kelthan leader who had first rejected humanity. "Admiral Kang," his voice was broken, filled with something that sounded almost like wonder. "My daughter just called me. I didn't even know I had a daughter until today. The human transmissions, they awakened memories I had suppressed. She told me she loved me. I don't understand this feeling, but I think I want to learn." The tide of the war had turned not through superior firepower or better tactics, but through the simple power of human emotion spreading across the galaxy like a wildfire of the heart. And for the first time in centuries, the cold, logical galaxy began to warm with the heat of feeling hearts. Dr. Minho Kim stood before the largest gathering of Earth's military leaders in history. The war room was packed with generals, admirals, scientists, and strategists from every nation. Giant screens showed star maps of alien territories, while holographic displays rotated slowly above the tables. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Kim began, "I believe we've been looking at this situation all wrong. The aliens didn't reject us because we're inferior. They rejected us because we're different in a way that terrifies them." General Ji-won Song leaned forward in her chair. She was known throughout the Earth Defense Force as someone who never made decisions based on fear. "Explain, Doctor." "For the past 6 months, I've been studying every piece of data we have on the major alien species. Medical scans, psychological profiles, historical records. What I found is remarkable." He pressed a button, and the room filled with holographic brain scans. "Every single advanced species in the galaxy has deliberately removed their capacity for emotion." Murmurs filled the room. Dr. Kim continued. "The Kelthans did it through chemical implants. The Nexari used genetic modification. The Vorthak underwent surgical procedures. The Zenthi created drugs that suppress all emotional responses. They've all chosen logic over feeling." Admiral Sunho Kang, Earth's senior fleet commander, frowned. "Why would they do that?" "Because emotions are messy. They're unpredictable. They make you do things that don't always make perfect sense." Dr. Kim smiled grimly. "But here's what they don't understand. Those seemingly irrational choices are often exactly what wins battles, saves lives, and creates breakthroughs." Commander Hyun-woo Park, who had returned from the Alien Council just days before, nodded slowly. "They couldn't understand why our soldiers would risk everything to save one wounded comrade. They saw it as a tactical error." "Exactly," Dr. Kim said. "But what they missed is that those soldiers fight harder because they know their friends will never abandon them. Our emotions don't make us weak. They make us unpredictable. And in warfare, unpredictable is exactly what you want to be." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These alien species had made themselves completely logical, which meant they were completely predictable. 3 weeks later, Captain Subin Lee was running the strangest military exercise in Earth's history. Her ship, the UES Defiant, faced off against advanced computer simulations of alien fleets. But instead of following standard tactical procedures, her crew was ordered to make decisions based on their feelings. "Tai-ho," she called to her chief engineer. "How are you feeling about the enemy formation?" Tai-ho Choi looked at the tactical display and frowned. "Something feels wrong, Captain. They're positioned perfectly for a standard attack, but my gut says it's too perfect, like they want us to attack their left flank. Trust your instincts. Yuna, target their right flank instead." Yuna Han's fingers flew over her weapons console. "It doesn't make tactical sense, Captain. Their right side is better defended." "Do it anyway." The simulation played out, and once again, the human, illogical choice proved devastating to the enemy. The alien AI had predicted a logical attack on the weakest point and had positioned accordingly. The emotional gut-feeling choice caught them completely off guard. "This is incredible," Dr. Kim said, reviewing the results. "The alien tactical computers are designed to predict logical responses. They literally cannot process truly irrational decisions." Captain Dae-ho-oh, commander of the UES Resilience, raised his hand. "Doctor, are you saying our emotions are actually a military advantage?" "I'm saying they're our greatest weapon. Think about it. When was the last time any of you made a decision based purely on logic? You factor in how you feel, what your instincts tell you, what your heart says is right. The aliens can't do that anymore. They've programmed themselves to be perfect logical machines." "And machines can be hacked," General Song added with a growing smile. The first real test came sooner than expected. Kelthan peacekeeping ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, claiming the right to establish monitoring stations. Their message was coldly logical. Resistance would be futile. Cooperation would be rewarded. Captain Dae-ho-oh took his ship to intercept them. The Kelthan fleet commander, Zalketh, opened communication channels with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 5-1. Logic dictates immediate surrender. We do not wish to destroy you, unnecessarily. Deho looked at the tactical display. The alien was right. 5 advanced ships against his single vessel was hopeless. Any logical commander would surrender. But Deho was thinking about his daughter Minji back on Earth, probably doing her homework right now, trusting her father to keep her safe. Kelthan, Commander, Deho replied. Logic is overrated. What happened next shattered every prediction the Kelthan computers had made. Instead of surrendering or retreating, Deho did something no logical being would ever consider. He rammed his heavily damaged ship directly into the Kelthan flagship. But this wasn't a suicide run. At the last second, the Resilience's escape pods launched, carrying the crew to safety. The ship itself, loaded with every explosive device they could find, tore through the enemy flagship like a meteor through paper. For Minji! Deho screamed over the comm as his ship struck home. The remaining Kelthan ships fled in complete confusion. Their computers had no programming for dealing with someone who would sacrifice a valuable military asset for no tactical gain. They didn't understand that Deho hadn't lost anything. He had saved everything that mattered to him. When the rescue ships found Deho floating in his escape pod, he was grinning like a madman. Did you see their faces when I hit them? They looked like their brains broke. News of the battle spread through both human and alien space. On Earth, Deho became a hero, the man who proved that heart could beat logic. In alien space, the reports caused confusion and concern. How do you fight an enemy who doesn't follow logical patterns? Dr. Kim studied the battle recordings with fascination. Look at this, he told his research team. The moment Deho decided to ram their ship, the Kelthan tactical computers started making errors. They couldn't process an irrational action, so they began calculating responses to threats that didn't exist. So their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, observed Commander Park. Exactly. They've removed the very thing that makes beings truly unpredictable, the ability to act on emotion, instinct, and love. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Captain Subin Lee was putting together what would become known as Chaos Squadron. Her pilots were handpicked not for their logical thinking but for their emotional intelligence. They were people who trusted their instincts, who fought with passion, who made split-second decisions based on feelings rather than calculations. Their first mission was simple: make the aliens afraid to fight humans. Juno Nam, Subin's best pilot, summed up their strategy perfectly. We're going to be so unpredictable that their computers crash trying to figure out what we'll do next. And how do we do that? Asked another pilot. Juno grinned. Easy. We stop thinking like soldiers and start thinking like humans. When we're scared, we act scared. When we're angry, we fight angry. When we love something, we protect it no matter what the odds say. The aliens had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of logical warfare. They were about to discover that humans had spent their entire existence perfecting something far more dangerous: fighting with their hearts. As reports of human irrational tactics began reaching alien command centers across the galaxy, military leaders found themselves facing a problem they had never encountered before: an enemy that couldn't be predicted, couldn't be calculated, and couldn't be understood. The war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what they were really fighting. The massive chamber stretched out like a metal cave filled with strange sounds. Clicks, whistles, and electronic beeps echoed off the walls as hundreds of alien beings filled their seats. Commander Hyun-Woo Park stood alone at the center, his black uniform the only splash of familiar color in this sea of bizarre creatures. The Galactic Council had called this meeting to decide humanity's fate. For 50 years, humans had been trying to join the galactic community. Today, they would get their answer. Hyun-Woo looked up at the towering figure of Velthar, the Kelthan Prime Minister. His body looked like living crystal, sharp and cold. Light bounced off his surface in rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass. Humans, Velthar began. We have watched your species for decades. We have studied your behavior, your decisions, your wars. We have reached a conclusion. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant chittering and clicking stopped. Hyunwoo felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his face calm. Behind him, he knew Dr. Minho Kim was watching from the guest section, taking notes on everything. Your species is broken, Velthar continued. You make choices based on feelings, instead of facts. You cry when sad things happen. You become angry when things don't go your way. You love people who bring you no logical benefit. This is not the behavior of an advanced civilization. A ripple of agreement went through the assembly. The Nexari delegates, looking like giant metal spiders, tapped their legs on the floor. The Vorthak representatives, tall and gray with no visible emotions on their faces, nodded slowly. The Zenthi, with their perfectly smooth heads and calculating eyes, made soft humming sounds that meant approval. Hyunwoo clenched his fists but said nothing. He had been warned this might happen, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. We have examples, Velthar went on. Your soldiers abandon tactical advantages to save wounded comrades. Your leaders make treaties based on trust instead of guaranteed outcomes. Your artists create things that serve no practical purpose. Your parents sacrifice their own resources for children who may never benefit the species. More sounds of agreement filled the chamber. A Nexari speaker stood up, its metallic voice echoing. We eliminated such weaknesses from our people 3,000 years ago. We became efficient, logical, perfect. As did we, added a Vorthak delegate. Emotion is a disease. We cured ourselves of it through genetic modification. Now we make only correct decisions. Hyunwoo wanted to shout at them, to tell them they were wrong, but he knew that would only prove their point. Instead, he spoke calmly. With respect, honored delegates, our emotions have helped us survive. They drive us to protect each other, to explore new worlds, to create beauty in the universe. Velthar made a sound like breaking ice, which Hyunwoo had learned was Kelthan laughter. Survive? Your own planet is covered in the remains of wars fought over feelings. Love, hate, pride, fear. These things nearly destroyed you before you even reached the stars. But they didn't destroy us, Hyunwoo replied. We learned from them. We grew. You remained flawed, Velthar said with finality. We cannot accept a species that makes decisions with their hearts instead of their minds into our council. You are unpredictable. Dangerous. Dr. Minho Kim shifted in his seat. His research on alien psychology had predicted this exact response, but he had hoped. He was wrong. For months he had studied every piece of information available about the major galactic species. What he found was disturbing. Every single one had deliberately removed their ability to feel emotions. On the edge of Earth's solar system, Captain Subin Lee sat in the command chair of the UES Defiant, listening to the live transmission from the council chambers. Her crew was gathered around the communication station, their faces growing darker with each word. They think we're broken, whispered Yunahan, the weapons specialist. She was young, barely 25, but already one of Earth's best tactical officers. They think feeling things makes us weak. Taeho Choi, the chief engineer, shook his head. My grandmother always said our hearts make us strong. These aliens, they sound like machines. Captain Subin had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years. She had seen humans do incredible things when they fought for what they loved. She had watched engineers work for days without sleep to save a damaged ship. She had seen soldiers charge into impossible situations to rescue their friends. The aliens called this weakness? Back in the council chamber, Velthar was reaching his conclusion. The Galactic Council has decided. Humanity will not be granted membership. Your species is too unstable, too emotional, too primitive for civilized space. Hyunwoo felt his face grow hot with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. What are our options? We offer you protected status, Velthar replied. You will be allowed to exist under our guidance. We will make the important decisions for your species. We will help you become more logical, more controlled. In time, perhaps your children can learn to suppress their emotions as we have. The Insult hit harder than an outright rejection. They wanted to make humans into pets controlled and managed by their alien masters. And if we refuse? Hyunwoo asked. Then you remain quarantined to your small corner of space. You will have no contact with galactic civilization. No trade, no technology sharing, no expansion beyond your current borders. You will be alone. Hyunwoo looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces. Some looked curious, others seemed bored. None showed anything that looked like sympathy or understanding. They had removed those feelings from themselves long ago. I need to consult with my government, Hyunwoo said finally. Of course, Velthar replied. Take all the time you need to make the logical choice. But as Hyunwoo walked out of the chamber, he knew the choice had already been made. Humanity would never accept being treated like children who needed alien babysitters. Dr. Minho Kim caught up with him in the corridor. Commander, I've been thinking about their behavior patterns. Did you notice how predictable their responses were? Everything followed perfect logical sequences. No surprises, no unexpected moves. What are you getting at, Doctor? They've made themselves into machines. They can't understand anything that doesn't follow logical patterns. That might be... He paused. That might be something we can use. 3 days later, Hyunwoo stood in the council chamber one final time. The aliens waited for humanity's answer with the same cold patience they showed everything else. The human race has considered your generous offer, Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. We appreciate your willingness to guide us toward what you consider a better way of life. Velthar leaned forward slightly. And? Hyunwoo smiled, and for the first time since arriving, he let his emotions show in his voice. We respectfully decline. We choose to remain exactly as we are, emotional, unpredictable, and free. The chamber erupted in surprise sounds. This was not the logical choice. No species had ever refused their guidance before. You choose isolation over improvement? Velthar asked, genuinely confused. We choose to be human, Hyunwoo replied, and maybe someday you'll understand what that really means. As he walked away from the council for the last time, Hyunwoo activated his communication device. This is Commander Park to Earth Command. The talks have failed. They don't want us as we are. General Jiwon Song's voice came back strong and clear. Then we'll show them exactly what we are, Commander. Come home. We have work to do. The Galactic Council had made their decision. They thought emotions made humans weak and primitive. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Dr. Minho Kim stared at the strange device on his laboratory table. It looked harmless enough, just a small metal sphere covered in sensors and transmitters. But this little ball might change the course of the war. Are you sure this will work? Asked General Jiwon Song, who had come to see the demonstration herself. The theory is sound, Dr. Kim replied, picking up the device carefully. We've learned that the aliens didn't just suppress their emotions. They completely removed the brain structures that process them. This device creates artificial emotional experiences and forces them directly into their minds. And that will do what exactly? Imagine if you suddenly felt every emotion you've suppressed for the last 1,000 years all at once. Love, hate, fear, joy, sadness, anger, everything hitting you like a tsunami. Most aliens won't know how to handle it. The first test subject was a captured Kelton soldier named Velcom. He sat in the testing chamber with the cold confidence typical of his species. His crystalline body reflected the lights in perfect patterns, and his voice carried no emotion when he spoke. Human experiments cannot break Kelton resolve. We are superior beings. Dr. Kim activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Velcom's perfect crystalline structure began to crack, letting out light in chaotic, uncontrolled patterns. What is this feeling? Velcom's voice shattered like breaking glass. I feel warm, cold, both? There is pressure in my chest cavity. Water is leaking from my optical sensors. You're crying, Dr. Kim said gently. You're experiencing sadness. Sadness? Velcom repeated the word like it was foreign. I remember this word from ancient texts. Our ancestors spoke of such things. Before the great logic, the Kelthan soldier curled into a ball, his body flickering with uncontrolled emotions. Within minutes, he was completely overwhelmed, unable to function. But something else happened too. For the first time in his adult life, he felt truly alive. It works, General Song said with satisfaction. How quickly can you mass-produce these? Give me a month. While Dr. Kim worked on his emotional weapons, Captain Subin Lee was revolutionizing space combat with Chaos Squadron. Her ships moved through space like living creatures instead of military vessels. Unpredictable, emotional, alive. Dragon, flight scatter formation, she ordered during a battle with Nixari ships. Follow your hearts, not your computers. Her pilots spread out in patterns that made no tactical sense. Juno Nam dove toward an enemy ship at an angle that exposed his vessel to maximum fire. But his gut told him the aliens wouldn't expect such a stupid move. He was right. The Nexari tactical computers allocated minimal firepower to what they calculated as a non-threat, allowing him to slip through their defenses and strike at their weak points. This is impossible, the Nexari commander transmitted. Your battle formations follow no known patterns. That's because we make them up as we go, Subin replied. Computer, play some music. Let's dance. The human ships began moving to rhythm, their flight patterns following the beat of an old Earth song. The alien targeting systems designed to predict logical movement failed completely. How do you calculate the trajectory of a ship that's dancing? But the real psychological warfare was happening on a much larger scale. Commander Hyunwoo Park had been placed in charge of something called the Emotional Warfare Division, and his mission was simple: make the aliens feel again. Sir, his aide reported, we've successfully hacked into 17 alien communication networks. Excellent. Begin transmission of Package Alpha. Across alien space, routine military communications were suddenly interrupted by something the aliens hadn't heard in centuries: music. Not just any music, but human songs filled with raw emotion. Love ballads that spoke of hearts breaking and healing. Battle hymns that celebrated courage in the face of certain death. Lullabies that promised protection and comfort. The effect was immediate and devastating. On Zenthi stations, workers stopped in the middle of their tasks as ancient emotional centers in their brains began firing for the first time since childhood. Some began to weep without understanding why. Others felt a strange warmth in their chests that their logic couldn't explain. A Zenthi communication to Earth Command was intercepted. Request immediate cessation of audio transmissions. Our productivity has decreased by 23%. Workers are experiencing malfunctions in their suppression systems. Malfunctions, Dr. Kim laughed when he read the report. They're experiencing feelings. They think emotions are system errors. The psychological campaign expanded. Human art, poetry, and stories were broadcast to every alien world they could reach. But the most effective weapon was something much simpler: recordings of human families, a mother singing to her baby, a father teaching his son to ride a bicycle, grandparents telling stories to their grandchildren, siblings laughing together, simple moments of pure human emotion that cut through alien logic like a knife through paper. On the Vorthak homeworld, an elderly scientist named Korthval was working late in his laboratory when the human transmission began. It was a recording of a human grandfather reading bedtime stories to his granddaughter. The old man's voice was warm and gentle, filled with love for the child. Korthval found himself stopping his work to listen. Something stirred deep in his mind, a memory from before his emotional suppression surgery. He remembered his own grandfather, long dead, who used to tell him stories about the stars. For the first time in 60 years, Korthval felt something that wasn't cold logic. He felt love, and loss, and a desperate longing for something he could never get back. Within hours, he had contacted other Vorthak scientists. Within days, they had formed a secret group to study these strange human emotional transmissions. Within weeks, they were questioning everything their society had taught them about the value of pure logic. The aliens' response was swift and predictable. They tried to jam human transmissions, but humans had learned to piggyback emotional content onto regular communication channels. They attempted to create counter-propaganda, but logical arguments couldn't compete with the simple power of a human child laughing. Some alien leaders declared the human transmissions to be a form of biological warfare, which, in a way, they were. The humans were weaponizing the very thing that made them human. Tiho Choi had been working around the clock to install what he called empathy broadcasters on asteroid mining stations throughout alien space. These devices were hidden inside regular mining equipment, invisible to alien sensors but capable of transmitting human emotional patterns across entire star systems. "How many do we have operational?" General Song asked during a briefing. 47 stations across 12 systems, Taeho reported. "When we activate them simultaneously, we'll reach about 30% of the alien population." "And what exactly will happen to them?" Dr. Kim answered. "They'll experience approximately 6 hours of compressed human emotional experience, everything from a baby's first smile to a soldier's final sacrifice. Most of them won't be able to handle it." "Some might die from the shock," Commander Park added grimly. "And some might finally understand what it means to be alive," Dr. Kim countered. The activation was scheduled for the anniversary of humanity's rejection from the Galactic Council. As the devices powered up across alien space, millions of beings who had lived their entire lives in emotional emptiness suddenly felt the full spectrum of human experience. The results varied by species. Many Kelthans went into shock, their crystalline bodies cracking under the strain of unfamiliar feelings. Nexari workers abandoned their posts to seek out others of their kind, desperate for connection they didn't understand. Zenthi artists began creating for the first time in millennia, their perfectly ordered minds suddenly exploding with chaotic creativity. But the most dramatic change happened on Vorthak worlds, where entire populations began to remember what they had lost when they chose logic over love. Riots broke out, not violent but emotional. Vorthak citizens demanded the right to feel again, to love their families, to experience joy and sorrow and everything in between. The galactic news networks were filled with confusion and panic. Emotional plague spreads across Zenthi colonies. Vorthak productivity drops to historic lows. Kelthan medical facilities overwhelmed by feeling sickness. But there were other headlines too. Zenthi couple celebrates first birth in emotion-free society. Vorthak artist creates sculpture dedicated to lost love. Kelthan child asks parent, "What is happiness?" The galaxy was changing, one feeling hard at a time. And the aliens who had once mocked humans for being too emotional were beginning to understand that maybe, just maybe, emotions weren't a weakness after all. They were the very thing that made life worth living. The Zenthi homeworld had never seen anything like it. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the streets were filled with beings who were not walking in perfect formation to their assigned duties. Instead, they wandered in small groups, talking, laughing, and sometimes crying together. Mia Park, Commander Hyunwoo Park's daughter, walked through the capital city with wonder in her eyes. She had volunteered for the first diplomatic mission to a world experiencing emotional awakening, and what she found amazed her. "The transformation is incredible," she spoke into her recording device. 3 months ago, these people followed rigid schedules and spoke only when necessary. Now look at them. They're having conversations, forming friendships, creating art. Her guide was Zenthar, one of the first Zenthi to voluntarily remove his emotion suppression implants. His formerly smooth head now showed expression lines, and his eyes had developed a warmth that had been missing for centuries. "Human Mia," he said in his melodic voice. "Before your people came, I calculated everything. How much food to eat for maximum efficiency. How much sleep for optimal performance. How many words to speak for clearest communication. Now I eat when I'm hungry, sleep when I'm tired, and talk because I enjoy conversation. It is chaotic, but also wonderful." Mia smiled. "That sounds very human to me." Their conversation was interrupted by a group of young Zenthi, who had gathered around a newly created sculpture. It was crude and unpolished, but it radiated something that had been missing from Zenthi art for generations: Emotion. What do you think it represents? One young Zenthi asked another. I'm not sure, came the reply, but looking at it makes me feel warm inside. Is that normal? Mia approached the artist, a middle-aged Zenthi named Colvin who was staring at his own creation with confusion and pride. This is my first attempt at non-functional creation, he explained. For 40 years I built things that served logical purposes. Yesterday I felt compelled to build something that served no purpose except to be beautiful. I don't understand why I did it, but I couldn't stop myself. That's called inspiration, Mia said gently. It's one of the most human things there, is Gundam creating something just because it feels right. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. The emotional revolution that had started as a military tactic was becoming something far more profound, a fundamental change in how entire civilizations viewed existence itself. On Vorthak Prime, Jaehyun Lim worked with former military officers who were struggling to understand their newfound capacity for feelings. As a human psychologist who had studied trauma and emotional recovery, he was uniquely qualified to help beings who had voluntarily traumatized themselves by removing their ability to feel. The anger is the hardest part, admitted Varthok, a former Vorthak general who now worked in what they called a reintegration center. For 60 years I made decisions that hurt people, and I felt nothing. Now I remember their faces, and the guilt is overwhelming. Guilt means you care, Jaehyun explained patiently. It means you understand that your actions affected others. That's not a weakness, it's the foundation of morality. But how do I live with it? The same way humans do. You acknowledge what you did wrong. You try to make amends where possible, and you use those feelings to make better choices going forward. These counseling sessions were happening across the galaxy as millions of beings struggled to reintegrate emotions they had suppressed for generations. Some couldn't handle it and sought to return to their old ways, but they were a minority. Most found that despite the pain and confusion, feeling was better than the cold emptiness they had known. The most dramatic changes were happening in the younger generation. Alien children who had grown up without emotions were experiencing them for the first time, and their reactions ranged from wonder to terror. Nara Song, a human artist and teacher, worked with young Kelthan children who had never seen their parents smile or heard them laugh. The first time she showed them a recording of human families playing together, the children's crystalline bodies began to glow with patterns no Kelthan had seen in centuries. Teacher Nara asked a young Kelthan named Vel Lin, "Why does watching the human children make my chest feel warm?" "That's happiness," Nara explained. "You're feeling joy because you see others enjoying themselves. Is it normal to want to play like that?" "Very normal." "Would you like to try?" What followed was the first game of tag played on the Kelthan homeworld in over 2,000 years. The sight of young Kelthans running and laughing, their bodies flickering with the light patterns of pure joy, brought tears to the eyes of adult observers who were remembering what it felt like to be young and carefree. But not everyone was happy about these changes. The old guard of each species, those in power who had benefited from the cold efficiency of emotionless societies, fought back against what they saw as chaos and regression. General Zaxthor, supreme commander of the Kelthan military, watched the reports from across the galaxy with growing fury. Unlike others of his kind, he had managed to resist the human emotional transmissions through sheer force of will and advanced mental conditioning. "This ends now," he declared to his assembled officers. "The humans have infected our people with their primitive emotional disease, but we still have the power to stop it. We will cleanse the galaxy of this contamination, starting with Earth itself." His plan was coldly logical and utterly ruthless. A massive fleet would strike at Earth's solar system while simultaneously attacking every world where emotional awakening had taken hold. The infected populations would be quarantined and subjected to forced resuppression of their emotions. "Sir," one of his subordinates asked, "what about our own people who have been affected?" "They are no longer our people," Zaxthor replied, without hesitation. "They are casualties of war. We will mourn them logically and continue with our mission." But Zaxthor had made the same mistake that every alien leader before him had made. He assumed that emotions made beings weak and easily defeated. He was about to learn otherwise. Captain Subin Lee now commanded a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flew alongside vessels crewed by Vorthak, who had chosen love over logic, Zenthi, who had embraced creativity, and even some Kelthans who had discovered the power of hope. "Captain," reported Torvak, her Vorthak second-in-command, "we're receiving distress calls from 17 systems. The Kelthan fleet is attacking colonies with high concentrations of emotionally awakened populations." Subin felt anger rise in her chest. Not the cold fury of logic, but the passionate rage of someone watching innocent people suffer. "Then we stop them." "The enemy fleet outnumbers us 3-1, Torvak pointed out. "Since when have humans cared about odds?" Subin smiled grimly. "Besides, we're not just fighting with ships and weapons anymore. We're fighting with everything that makes us who we are." The final battle of the emotional war was about to begin. On one side stood the last defenders of pure logic, determined to eliminate feelings from the galaxy forever. On the other stood humans and their allies, fighting not just for their lives but for the right to feel, to love, to be fully alive. Admiral Sunho Kang prepared Earth's defenses while Dr. Minho Kim made final adjustments to their most powerful weapon yet, a galaxy-wide emotional broadcast that would reach every suppressed mind in space. "Are you ready?" Admiral Kang asked. Dr. Kim nodded. "This will be the strongest emotional transmission we've ever attempted. Every being in the galaxy will experience the full range of human feeling: love, loss, hope, despair, courage, fear, joy, sorrow, all of it at once. And if it doesn't work, then we'll face the end like humans always have, together, feeling everything, and never giving up hope." The transmission began just as Zaxthor's fleet entered the Sol system. For one brief shining moment, every conscious mind in the galaxy experienced what it truly meant to be alive, to feel the full spectrum of existence, from deepest sorrow to highest joy, and in that moment the galaxy made its choice. President Hyunwoo Park stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall on New Geneva Station had been built specifically for this moment, the founding of the Confederation of Feeling Worlds. Representatives from over 300 species filled the vast space, and for the first time in anyone's memory, the hall buzzed with genuine conversation, laughter, and yes, even the occasional tear. "Friends, allies, fellow beings," Hyunwoo began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "1 year ago, humanity was told we were too emotional to join your galaxy. Today, we stand together not as conquerors and conquered, but as beings who have chosen to feel rather than simply exist." Applause filled the hall, not the polite, measured acknowledgement of the old Galactic Council, but enthusiastic, heartfelt appreciation. In the front row, Velthar sat with his daughter Vel Lin, both of their crystalline forms glowing with warm, happy light. The former Kelthan Prime Minister had become one of the strongest advocates for emotional integration. "I was wrong," Velthar said when called to speak. "We all were. We thought removing emotions made us superior, but it only made us incomplete. The humans didn't defeat us in battle. They showed us how to live again." Dr. Minho Kim watched from the gallery with satisfaction. His research into alien psychology had started this whole chain of events, but even he hadn't predicted how completely the galaxy would transform. His latest studies showed that planets with emotional awakening had lower crime rates, higher creativity indexes, and something that had been almost extinct for centuries: genuine happiness levels that actually registered on their instruments. "The transition hasn't been easy for everyone," admitted Zenthar during his presentation on Zenthi rehabilitation programs. "Some of our people struggle with the intensity of feelings after so many generations of suppression. But our suicide rates have dropped to historic lows. When life has meaning again, beings want to keep living." Captain Subin Lee had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the Confederation Defense Force, a mixed fleet of humans and aliens working together. Her flagship was crewed by representatives from dozen worlds, all learning to fight not just with their minds but with their hearts. The old military doctrine was based on cold efficiency, she explained to a gathering of new recruits. We've developed something better. Passionate precision. When you care about what you're protecting, you fight smarter, not just harder. Her second-in-command, Torvak, nodded in agreement. The former Vorthak general had become something unique in his species' history, a warrior poet who wrote battle songs celebrating courage and sacrifice. In the old days, Torvak said, we fought because we were ordered to. Now we fight because we choose to protect what we love. The difference is everything. The most remarkable changes had occurred on worlds that had experienced complete emotional awakening. Kelthen Prime was barely recognizable. Its perfect crystal cities now showed chaotic beauty as residents modified their homes to reflect personal taste instead of logical efficiency. Children played in parks that had once been sterile meditation squares. Artists created sculptures that served no purpose except to be beautiful. Mia Park had established the Emotional Integration Institute on the former Zenthi homeworld, helping beings across the galaxy learn to process feelings they had never experienced. Her most challenging case had been General Zaxthor himself. The former Kelthen military leader had surrendered after Dr. Kim's final emotional broadcast. For the first time in his adult life, he had experienced the full range of human emotion, and the shock had left him catatonic for weeks. I remember my parents, he told Mia during one of their therapy sessions. I had parents who loved me, and I had them killed because I thought love was a weakness. How do I live with that knowledge? The same way humans live with our mistakes, Mia replied gently. We feel guilty. We try to make amends. And we use that pain to become better beings. Your guilt proves your healing. Zaxthor was now working in refugee centers, helping other former soldiers deal with the emotional trauma of rediscovering their capacity to feel. It was slow, difficult work, but he approached it with the same determination he had once brought to warfare. Not every species had embraced the changes completely. Some alien worlds had chosen to maintain limited emotional suppression, allowing their people to feel but with careful controls to prevent overwhelming experiences. Others had gone the opposite direction, embracing emotions so completely that their societies had become chaotic festivals of feeling. The diversity is what makes it beautiful, observed Nara Song, who now ran art therapy programs across the galaxy. Some species needed structure to handle their awakening emotions. Others needed complete freedom. We're learning that there's no single right way to feel. Taiho Choi had been promoted to chief engineer of the Confederation, overseeing the technology that kept thousands of different species connected across the galaxy. His greatest achievement was the Empathy Network, a communication system that could transmit not just words and images but emotional context as well. When a Zenthi talks to a Kelthen now, he explained, they don't just hear the words, they feel the emotions behind them. Understanding isn't just intellectual anymore, it's personal. Yunahan commanded the Confederation's new diplomatic corps, but it was unlike any diplomatic service in galactic history. Instead of cold negotiations based on logical interests, her diplomats were trained to understand and work with the emotional needs of different species. The old way was to find logical compromises, she said. The new way is to find solutions that make everyone feel valued and respected. It takes longer, but the agreements actually last because beings feel good about them. The most profound changes had occurred in the realm of scientific research. Dr. Kim's team had made breakthrough after breakthrough as alien scientists learned to combine logical analysis with intuitive leaps that only emotional beings could make. When you suppress emotions, you suppress imagination, Dr. Kim explained to a conference of galactic researchers. Logic can optimize existing solutions, but it takes feelings, curiosity, wonder, hope, to discover entirely new possibilities. The results spoke for themselves. Medical advances that had eluded purely logical researchers for centuries were solved by teams that included emotional insight. Art and science began to merge, creating technologies that were not just functional, but beautiful. Jaehyun Lim had established the Galactic Mental Health Initiative, the first such organization in known history. His team of human and alien counselors worked with beings across the galaxy who were struggling to integrate emotions, into lives that had been coldly logical for generations. The biggest surprise, he reported, is that most beings adapt faster than we expected. It turns out the capacity for emotion was never really gone. It was just buried. Once we helped dig it out, most species remember how to feel surprisingly quickly. 5 years after humanity's rejection from the Galactic Council, President Park stood in the same chamber where they had once been dismissed as too emotional. But now it was filled with laughter, tears, passionate debates, and warm embraces between former enemies. "We were told that emotions make beings weak," he said in his closing speech. "We were told that feelings lead to chaos and destruction. We were told that logic alone could create a perfect society." He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives, beings who now argued with passion, laughed with joy, and sometimes cried with sorrow, but who were more alive than they had been in millennia. They were wrong about everything. Emotions don't make us weak, they make us strong. Feelings don't create chaos, they create meaning. Logic alone doesn't build perfect societies. It builds empty ones. Captain Deho, sat in the audience, with his daughter Minji, now grown and serving as a pilot in the Confederation fleet. She had never known a galaxy without emotion, and watching her laugh with alien friends who would have been impossible to imagine just a few years ago, he felt the deep satisfaction of a father who had helped build a better world for his child. "Keon, Galaxy mocked us for being too emotional," President Park continued. "But emotion is what saved us all. It's what brought meaning back to lives that had forgotten why they were worth living. It's what turned enemies into friends and made strangers into family." Admiral Sunho Kang smiled from his place in the military section. His fleet no longer existed to fight wars, but to explore new worlds and protect the peace that emotion, not logic, had finally brought to the galaxy. "We stand here today not as separate species competing for resources, but as one large family learning to live together. We fight when we must. We cry when we're sad. We laugh when we're happy. And we love because love is what makes existence worthwhile." The final vote was unanimous, something that would have been impossible under the old system of pure logic. The Confederation of Feeling Worlds was officially established, with humanity not as rulers, but as teachers, helping others remember what it meant to be alive. As the ceremony concluded and beings from across the galaxy mingled together, hugging, laughing, sharing stories and tears, one thing was perfectly clear. The species that had been rejected for being too emotional had done something no logical civilization had ever achieved. They had created a